Okay, so what we're going to do today is install a backup camera on my 2012 Subaru STI. The camera I've got is the Rydeen BL01MR is the kit that I ordered. That kit comes with a Rydeen MINy universal camera. This is the lowest end of the Rydeen cameras that they offer. I didn't see any point in going with the more expensive models, which offer night vision, as the only time I need this to work, my reverse lights will be on. But you can see, and the model number of that camera, if that's going to focus in and show up. There we go. Alright, so we've got the camera, and the kit also comes with a mounting bracket. It's difficult to do this with one hand, to mount the camera from behind the license plate. As you see, that'll hook over the license plate and the camera will mount up over there. And a few screws to attach the camera to the mounting bracket. The other thing that I ordered to do this is a wiring harness from AE64.com, and I'll put a link to that below the video. I'm going to switch hands. I don't know why I'm trying to do this with my left hand and hold the camera with my right. That wiring harness, if I can get it out. Looks like this. It is a 16-pin wiring harness, which is made to fit in the back of the nav head unit that's already in the STI. And if I didn't mention that before, my STI does have the OEM nav head unit. I'll go inside here in just a second. Anyways, there's already a 16-pin plug in the back of it. We're going to replace that with this plug, which will then give us our 6-volt hot output that'll power the camera, and the video input to relay the signal from the camera back into the head unit. This wiring harness, when it's stock on the Subaru, has a wire that goes into it, which is this black wire here. That wire is what usually tells the car if the parking brake is engaged and stops certain features on the head unit, such as being able to type in addresses on the nav, things of that nature. On this, I ordered this one from AE64.com with that wire grounded out to the head unit itself. So as you can see, that wire just loops around and goes into another position on the 16-pin harness, and that grounds it, basically making the head unit think that the parking brake is always engaged. According to what I've read, it's not going to make any big difference, because the head unit also detects the speed of the car, and unless the speed is at 0, there are certain features it's not going to allow you to do. Going inside the Subaru, and we need more light in here, obviously. Let's see if we can get some light on this. Well, maybe not. Okay. Hopefully this will come out. Well, as you can see, it's got the factory nav in it. I'm going to be back in here in a little bit, and I'll get some better light in here so you guys can see. The model number is FW602US of my head unit. If you go out to AE64.com, he has a whole list of head units which his 16-pin wiring harnesses work on, and you can verify that the head unit that's in your car is going to work with his wiring harness. If it won't, he's pretty up to date on what you'll need. If you just tell him what kind of car you got and what model head unit you got, he'll get you the right wiring harness. So anyways, we're going to start. I'm going to pull the head unit out, and we're going to test the camera first before we go through the rest of the installation. So I'm going to get some light in here and fire it back up. Okay, so now we got some light in here. And I'm going to adjust that just a little bit so it's not in my eyes. So first step is getting the head unit out. Real simple on the Subaru. I had to go look this up on YouTube, but you can see this piece here just pulls out. I just got my fingernails in behind it and pulled on it and got it started before I started this video. And keep pulling around until the whole thing pops out. Alright, so that comes out. Set that in the floorboard. And now that that's out, there are going to be 4 screws. You can see 2 on that side. Get the light out of the way. And 2 over on that side. So we're going to go ahead and pull those 4 out and slide the head unit out of there. Alright, so learning as we go, I undid the 4 screws holding the head unit in and tried to pull it out. It wouldn't come out. It was obviously the cables were holding it from coming out. So I undid 2 more screws and pulled out the air vents, which were in here like that. Took a little bit of wiggling and got those out of there after the screws are out. And as you can see, hope you can see, there is a gray wire back in there that has been taped together. When you try to pull that wire, or when you try to pull the head unit out, that wire doesn't have enough room to let the thing come all the way out. So we're going to cut the tape that's got that gray wire together, and that should allow us to pull the head unit all the way out. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll get the head unit out. Okay, so once we cut the tape, we're able to get the head unit out enough. It won't come all the way out. There's still not enough cable provided in the back of the unit to slide it all the way out, but we've got enough to get to the 16-pin harness that we're interested. And if you were to be looking at the back of the head unit, it would be towards the top right. It's going to be this harness right here. We're going to pull that one out and replace it with the harness from AE64. And that's going to give us our leads that we need to hook up the camera. Okay, so we got the harness out of the head unit, and I was about to put the new one in and realized that I'd forgot something I wanted to do, which is I want to put a female connector on the end of the 6-volt power wire coming out of the head unit, so that I can then put a male connector on the end of the camera's power wire and connect and unconnect those, as opposed to having to solder those together or use a butt connector. Okay, the new connector is in, and I should say the new harness is in, and I've gone ahead and pulled my 2 cables that I'm interested in out to the top of the head unit, so I'll be able to plug the camera in and test it out before I run all my wires and spend all that time. I'm going to make sure everything works right. So let's go ahead, and I've got the head unit. You see, I think I've got to hang them by the wires. It's actually resting on my shop light in there that I wedged in where the air vents used to be. So let me go ahead and get the camera out, and I'll put a male connector on the lead wire of it. And actually, I'll show myself doing that. So I need to show y'all what which lead wire to use. Alright, so here's the camera coming out of the box, and I want to show y'all there's one thing that's going to be a little tricky about this camera, and the tricky thing is that it's actually got 2 power leads on it. It's got one which is going to be a shorter power lead, and I don't have all this cable rolled out right now, and I'm not going to until I get ready to run it. But one is going to be a shorter power lead further up in the in the bundle of wires. That power lead is meant to use if you're going to wire it into your reverse lights on a 12-volt reverse, on a 12-volt wire, which is powering your reverse lights. However, that's not what we're going to do, because we've got a power wire coming off the head unit, and that power wire coming off the head unit knows when the car is in reverse and is only going to come on and supply power to the camera when the car is in reverse. So this wire says reverse power anode output. This is actually that's saying that that's going to take the power output from your head unit when you put it into reverse. This is actually going to be the wire we're going to use to, I can get it in the camera, the wire we're going to use to supply power. And as you can tell, it just pigtails right off of the RCA output of the camera. That's important, so that means we're only going to have to run one wire, which is this RCA cable, and it's got the power wire integrated with it. These two power wires actually junction at the same point somewhere in here, right there. They will junction here and actually supply the same power feed, which ends up being 3.3 volts, I believe, is what it takes to power the camera. So the 6 volt coming out of the back of our head unit is going to be plenty to power that thing. So I'm going to go ahead and strip this wire and put a male connector on it so that we can plug it in and unplug it as we need to, and then we'll get this thing hooked up and test the camera out. Alright, so I'm back in the car. Got the camera set up here on the dash. As you can tell, the lead that I said was supposed to go to the reverse 12-volt power supply would be spliced in if you had to use that. I've gone ahead and clipped it off and crimped a little piece of heat shrink over the top of it to insulate that. And then on the other side here, keep the camera on it, got my RCA input and added a male connector to the end of the power wire there. So we're going to go ahead and hook these up to our feeds coming off the head unit, and we're going to go ahead and test the camera out, turn the car on and pop it in reverse and make sure we can see. Okay, so now we got the car turned on. We haven't started it, but I got the accessory turned on, radio's on, so I'm going to go ahead, shift into reverse, and there's our camera coming up. I don't know if you can see it on this or not. I can't see it from the screen, but the camera is working. Let's see if that comes out later. I can move it around, move the camera around up here. And see the screen change. I'll try to back up and see if it'll show. The one thing that's happening now, and I don't know if you're going to be able to tell this or not, but there are two sets of lines in the screen that are showing me basically they're the lines that tell you how the direction your car is backing up to, as well as they're colored to give you an idea of how far back you've got to go before you run into it. One of those sets of lines is being generated by the camera itself, and the other set of lines is being generated by the head unit. The ones that are on the head unit we can't do anything about, but we can get rid of the ones generated by the camera. The camera comes with, let me get this down here, see here there are 2 white wires and 2 green wires in here. I can get this where you can see them. And basically what we want to do is we want to connect the 2 green wires. If you connect the 2 green wires, then it will turn off the lines from the camera. If you connect the 2 white wires, it'll invert the image. So if you wanted it to look as if you were looking back over your shoulder, you would connect the 2 white wires. Oh, flip this around. But we want to just get rid of the lines. So we're going to unplug this and take it back over to the workbench and connect those two green wires and put some heat shrink on them to protect them, and then I think we're going to be ready to open the back hatch and run a few cables through the car and get this thing hooked up in the back to the license plate and hook it up to the head unit up front. Alright, so I've got it out on the workbench, and I'm going to show you guys a little better what I'm talking about on these green and white wires. So there's the camera. The camera has one lead that comes off of it, and then a junction which goes out to this next bundle of wires. That's what you're going to run all the way up to the front of your car. So basically you can run this one lead up somewhere that's going to give you an ability to put it in place easy to connect and disconnect from. I don't think I've got that in camera view, but this lead here. On that side of it, as you can tell, we have these green and white wires. They're white wires, say mirror option, which is the ability to mirror the image if you want it flipped around. And the other one is on the green wire. It says parking line. What we're going to do is pull that one out like that, as well as the other green one like that. And we're going to strip these two, connect them, and then put some heat shrink on them. And that should make the parking lines go away. Once we do that, we'll put it back in the car and test it and make sure. Alright, so we attached the two green wires there, put a little heat shrink on them, and I just put it in and tested it. Now I've only got one set of guidelines, which is good. So now everything's working. We just need to run some wires through the car and get this thing attached to the back hatch. So I'm going to go back and figure out how I'm going to run this wire, and then I'll come back here and show you all what I've done. Alright, so now we're in the back of the car and we got the hatch back up, and so the first thing we have to do is get this plastic piece off, and it turns out that brute force is just the way to go. I just got my fingernails in under the lips of it and pulled and got it started, and these clips are just going to pop off. I always hate doing this. I'm afraid I'm going to break a clip or two and have to order some more, but we're going to go ahead once I can get two hands on this and turn this camera off, and I'm going to pop the rest of these loose. I just wanted to show I had it started there. I'm going to get the rest of these loose and get this off, and then also take this piece and this piece off, because I'm going to, actually I may leave this on. I may just take this one over here off, because right here is where I'm going to run the wire through. I'm going to fish it through that boot and into the inside of the car, if you can see any of that, and then run it down through here, over there, and get it down and over to the driver's side. So I'm about to pull some stuff out of the back here. Okay, had to pop all of the plastic pieces off just to get them all to come off, because there was some overlap, and figured out that you have to start with the one at the top or at the back here, and then work your way around in order to get them all off. Once you get it going, just takes a little bit of force and pressure, and they'll all pop right off of there. And so I got them all off, got them over here laying on my dirty floor next to the commercial. Alright, a little bit of progress here. You can see now up here beside this light where it goes in, I've got a small hole that connects with the larger opening where I can tuck that wire in. Just use a 9/64 inch drill bit, drilled it right there towards the edge, and as the hole pulled through, it just pulled it out the side and cleaned up the burrs with some file and some needle nose pliers. So next is to mount the camera to the mounting bracket, which is going to go in the top holes of the license plate cover here. And then the license plate will go over that. And we'll get the wire running into the inside, and then we'll go on the inside and figure out what to do from there. I think that's where the work's going to get interesting, figure out how we're going to route these wires. Alright, so when you get your camera, there's going to be a piece that already comes with it with some 3M tape. If you're not using the license plate bracket that I've got, then you can just tape that on anywhere to your car, or it's also got notches in it where you can screw it into the car somewhere and mount it that way. But I'm going to use the bracket, which means I need to take this piece with the 3M tape off. And as you can see, it's held on by a little Allen screw there. So I'm going to pull that Allen screw out, and then you can see there's also another hole up at the top of the camera. And those 4 will line up with the 4 holes that are in this bracket. So I'm going to go ahead and get that Allen screw pulled out of there. And when you order the mounting bracket for the license plate holder, it also comes with 3 additional screws, just in case you lose one. So, and an Allen key. The Allen key actually came with the camera itself. So anyways, let me get these pulled apart and we'll get back to it. Okay, back in the back of the car now. What we got is we did disconnect the camera. I showed you that there was a disconnect in the line. And it's kind of a strange disconnect, but you just pull on the end pretty good, give it a pretty good tug, and it comes loose. And that's just up from where we put the 2 green wires together to take the parking lines off. We've mounted the camera to the license plate bracket and screwed the bracket in behind the license plate. So now the camera is hanging out just on the center of the car. Did find one downside about doing it this way, and that is that bracket does get in your way a little bit when trying to open up the trunk. It's not undoable, but it is a little bit in the way. So you got that to think about if you were to decide you wanted to just mount it up here beside the lid opening. You could do it there and just stick it there and not use the license plate bracket. But I kind of like the clean look of having it dead center right there on the license plate bracket. So anyways, now I'm going to run that wire up through the license plate light holes. We're going to get it inside, and then we'll figure out where we're going to run it from there. Alright, so I'm going to show you what I'm doing on the back of the car. We're going to do it in steps. First off, camera's mounted, wires run up through the license plate light. Going on the inside, I hope y'all can see this, is this wire here. I ran it down and out this hole. Actually, that could have been pulled a little tighter, and I'm going to pull it tighter. Zip tied it here to the backup light. Ran it through one of these down and through the next clip here, which is unused, and then into this hole. Then I came down here and had to pull this boot down so that I could get the wire fed down through there. And I'm going to feed the wire through the boot now, and then that'll feed back up here, in here under the headliner. I don't know how well that's going to show up. I need to get my light back here, but my stereo's resting on it right now. So I pulled the headliner down. To pull the headliner down, it's pretty simple. There are 2 clips. I hope you can see these, and they're just round circles. Just stick a screwdriver in under them and pop them down. They do not pull all the way out. Actually, they can't pull all the way out, but you don't have to pull them all the way out. So that's what they are, and they're pop those out, and the headliner will pull down. And then for the tower over here on this side, there are 2 screws in it. One here, one there, and then up in the top, make sure I can get in here, up in the top up here, there are 2 of these clips. And if you've done much work on an STI, WRX, or Impreza, you're probably familiar with these. Put a screwdriver in them, pop this piece down, then put it in behind this other ridge and pop the whole thing out. They're pretty simple. Once you do that, you can grab this tower cover back here and peel it back, and that's going to let us see where we need to route the wires next. I'm going to do that as a next step. Right now, I'm going to get this wire run through the boot get the other end connected inside, just inside the headliner here. And I'm going to leave this boot off because I'm going to run, there's a ground wire on the other piece. I'm going to run back up and I'm going to ground it to this bolt right here. So the next time I come back on, I'll have all that done. And then we'll figure out where we're going with those wires after that. Alright, got the light working on my camera. Couldn't get it to come on before, so we're going to have some better light this time. I just wanted to show you all real quick. I went ahead and got that wire run from the parking brake light, which is right in there. I'm sorry, not parking brake light, the license plate light. Ran it through, down the pillar of the hatchback, in through this hole, down through there. This was a real challenge. I think I showed y'all earlier I had to disconnect this boot here. I then had to take a piece of solid copper wire and run it through, and connected that to a piece of piano wire, pulled it through, and then connected the piano wire to the end of my cable and was able to pull it through. But it is a very, very tight squeeze getting through there. The other thing I want to show is where I grounded this thing to. I did not want to try to pull the ground wire back up through the boot. So if you look back in there, pull this down a little bit and see if I can get in there. Right there is my ground wire on top of this little, it looks like a pump of some kind. Oh no, it's the keyless entry unit. So we're grounded to one of the mounting screws for the keyless entry unit. Interesting that that's way back here. Anyways, that is where we ground it. Then I bundled up a few of these wires that we still had, and I've just tucked them right up in here with some of these others. And now we get to run this wire, which eventually terminates to my RCA cable, and we got to get it all the way up to the front. So I'm going to figure out how to do that over the next few minutes and come back on and show you where I route that. Okay, so as before, I took this pillar completely off. Understand that to get this thing off, there's a tab up in that corner up there that says SRS airbag on it. You have to get a real thin screwdriver and get it underneath that and pop it out, and there's a screw behind it. So that was one little challenge. But what we've done is routed these wires through here, and the wire goes down on the other side of the seat belt. Come around the car, and you'll see we've popped this panel off down here, and I just ran an electrician's fish tape down the other side of the seat belt, and it just popped out right there at that bottom rocker panel. So now I've got it down through that. Now I've got to run it through the rockers, and we'll bring it back up over on the driver's side under my feet. We'll figure out how to do that. Alright, the panels are back on, but I'm going to tell y'all it was difficult, but I ran it through these bottom rocker panels, popped them off, and be careful popping them off. These front ones need to come off first. If you try to pry from the back, you're going to crack one of them. Ran it through here. Again, it took the fish tape to get it through and some really thin wire to lead it, and then pull the thicker wire through. Just take your time. It then runs up through here on this panel, and you can see the wire hanging right there. I haven't secured it yet. I'm going to go ahead and zip tie it, and I just found a hole to route it through, and I've now got it just hanging out there where my vents are. So last thing to do is going to be to zip tie this cable up and route it to the back of the stereo, plug it into the RCA and the power output that was in the 16-pin connector, and put the stereo back in and test her out. So we're going to get that done real quick. We'll be right back. Alright, so here we go. Finished product. Got the car. Head unit comes on. Into reverse. there's our backup camera. As soon as we take it out of reverse, we go back to our radio. I'll try to get a shot of the camera. I don't know how good that's going to turn out. It doesn't look great on here. Oh, there we go. So that's the backup camera, working like a champ. And I guess the one other thing I wanted to see is when you cut the wheel, do the lines move? No, they don't. They stay where they're at. That's right, though. Alright, hope this helps.